Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield audio podcast.
I want to talk to you in this podcast about purity and performance. It may sound like an odd combination, but in all of the leadership training and all the leadership teaching that I do, I've learned an important principle and seen it played out in the lives of the people I coach. And I think it's an important principle for us to think about at this time of year in particular. There is a connection in the human soul between purity and performance. Now, by performance, I don't just mean physical performance, for example, on a football field, but all the things that allow us to do the physical things that we do, the inner things that enable us to do the things that we do outwardly, the ability to focus, the ability to think, the ability to envision a path down a football field, or envision an administrative plan, or envision a creative project of some sort. All of the things that enable performance, the functions of this mind, the heart, the soul, that allow us to engage in a successful and an effective performance, all of those things are connected to the question of purity. Now, I'm not going to preach. This is not a deeply spiritual message that I want to discuss in this podcast. Now, I am recording this at the beginning of Advent, so for Christians, there may be some connection between the question of purity, which we ought to be pondering, and this Advent season. I'm also recording this during Hanukkah. There's some connection for our Jewish friends between purity and the things celebrated in Hanukkah, the moments remembered, the Festival of Lights. But that's not why I'm doing it primarily. I'm just keenly aware that for most people who are intent upon great performance, they often neglect the issues of purity. Now, what do I mean by purity? In the context in which I'm discussing purity in this podcast, I'm really talking about those matters on which about which the soul is not at rest. Now, what do I mean by that? If you are about to engage in a major business project, if you're about to launch a new venture, if you are doing all the things that we do when we lead other people, if you are about to play the big game, launch the big project, make the big presentation, sit with your team and envision the possibilities for 2014, all of those functions of soul are only possible at an optimal level if you are at rest about the various spheres in your life. If there is, and the way that I'm using the word in this podcast, purity. If you've had a big fight with your spouse and you are carrying that into the coming weeks, you are not pure. I don't mean that primarily in a moral or spiritual sense. I mean it in the sense that your soul does not feel like all is well, that all is clean, and that there are no boulders, there are no radiating negatives in your life. That's probably the best way to think of the way that I'm using the word pure today. That you feel pure, that you don't feel like there's any negative radiating in your life. But if you've had a fight with your spouse, that can affect performance. If you are doing something that you consider to be immoral, something hidden, something covered over, something that you're ashamed of, that will affect performance. If you have been harsh with someone, if there is relational tension of some sort, if there's some issue of unforgiveness, if there's some issue of strife with you and someone that you care about, or someone with whom you ought to be at one, all of this can create this condition of impurity as I'm using it today. Now, that certainly can be a moral issue. If you are Roman Catholic and you have not gone to Mass or gone to confession in quite some time, that can be a matter about which you feel impure in the moral sense, and therefore it's a radiating negative in your life. That would not be the same for someone of another belief or another religion. So religion and ethics enter into this, but that's not the primary way in which I'm referencing it. I'm speaking of anything in your inner life that radiates negative. If that's happening, your performance is hampered. The guy who's going to run the ball down the field this week for the Dallas Cowboys, for example, he will perform better if he is pure inside, if he's not had a big fight, if he's not doing something that he considers to be wrong, immoral, illicit, he broke his word to his father, whatever it is, and that's somehow radiating negatively in his soul. If he feels like he's caught up with his children, if he feels like he's doing the right thing in his religion or doing the right thing in his obligations, you see, all of those things create either a positive or a negative kind of radiating in the soul. And so when I coach leaders, and I coach leaders of a variety of religions, I coach leaders of a variety of fields, male, female, all types, I often watch them to see if they are feeling in sync with themselves. The old Greek word for hypocrite really meant that your outer life and your inner life were not in sync. A guy can look awesome, drive a great car, show up, put on his uniform, put on his suit. The woman can stand up looking awesome during the presentation. But if the inner life, as they perceive it, not as I perceive it necessarily, but as they perceive it, is inconsistent or out of sync with the outer life, then there is going to be a radiating force of negative in their soul that distracts, that weakens, that keeps them from being their best. Sometimes these can be old commitments. Sometimes these can be things that they've never really tended well, and it's always hampered them. I never did that thing I said I would do. I never showed up when I said I would show up. I never, gave what I said I would give. I am not saying that if you have a presentation to make at a boardroom this next Monday morning, that any negative thing that lurks anywhere in your life in some dark corner is going to keep you from doing a great presentation. I am saying, though, that in the sense in which I'm discussing it today, there is a connection between purity and performance. We perform in whatever arenas of performance we are made for and that we function in. We perform better when we feel pure, when we feel like we are not beset by a radiating negative that comes from something undone, untended, unfulfilled, or some act that we've committed that we feel guilty about. And so even though the leadership coaching that I do is not specifically about a person's faith, I probe those areas with them so that I find out, do they have some area of impurity, some area of radiating negative? And I got to tell you, sometimes the things people come up with that just eat at them are things I don't even consider to be a big deal, quite frankly. I borrowed $20 from a friend in high school years ago, and I never paid it back. And I felt terrible about that for 40 years. Well, if that's what's bugging them, then it needs to be dealt with. What's going on in your life? Performance is tied to purity. Performance is tied to a sense of cleanness, to a sense of a oneness between our outer and inner life, a sense that we are whole. And I urge you in this Advent season, at the end of Hanukkah, just here at the end of the year, that you look honestly at what you feel might be, quote unquote, impure in your life, and that you address any radiating negative, whether it was caused by somebody else or caused by your own actions. Your joy will increase, your performance will increase, your sense of belonging and place will increase, and you will be able to be more of what you're made to be. Purity is connected to performance.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author and popular speaker who coaches and advises leaders worldwide. To learn more about Stephen, log on to StephenMansfield.tv. The Stephen Mansfield podcast is produced by Isaac Darnell, who also wrote and performed the Rockin' Podcast theme song. This is a Chartwell Literary Group production. Chartwell is ingeniously led by Beverly Darnell Mansfield. As a result, all rights are reserved. For more information, contact us through StephenMansfield.tv.